got a question from Karthik in the chat. He wants to know about market validation, whether there's other channels besides email, phone calls that are worth it, specifically ads like Google or Facebook.
Yeah, ads work. In fact, ads are kind of like the most tried and true way to validate your idea. And I've interviewed like dozens of people who validated their idea with ads. So the podcast that just came out this Monday is with Justin Mayers. He tried like something like 24 ideas in the span of a year. And the best one was an idea where he was basically spending $5 a day on Google ads for it. And it was making $100 to $150 a day, selling basically a product that did not exist through Google ads. And his product was like bone broth, basically, because he's on the keto diet and he's a very healthy eater. And he hated making his own bone broth. And he figured other people might want the same. So he put up an ad for it and a ton of people bought it. And that told him it was a good idea. And it ended up being a good idea. And he does make all of his revenue basically from advertising. So he like sort of acquires customers. So like ads are a totally good user acquisition test. I would say that one thing that people don't realize is that when you're validating your idea, like I could talk about this for so long. The short version of it is like you don't want to validate your idea by testing a distribution channel that's different than the channel that you would ultimately use to grow. Like if you're using ads to test your business to see if it's going to work, then like you should also think that like ads are the way that your business is going to grow indefinitely. Like if you're doing cold emails to reach people, you should also think that cold emails are what's going to help you grow indefinitely. If you're doing something that like is completely mismatched, then you're probably going to run into issues down the road where this channel stops working for you. And that's not the worst thing in the world. Like eventually almost every growth channel stops working. That's kind of like the dirty secret of growth channels. Like you eventually hit the point of diminishing returns. You're getting on the front page of Hacker News too often and the mods cut you off, right? You've saturated Facebook or Google with your ads and now your ad rates are going up. You have to find a different channel. And like that happens to almost everybody. You know, you've covered all the store shelves in Whole Foods. It happens to almost every business. But you want that to last as long as possible. And so I would make sure you try to test the best ad channel for what you think your long-term growth is going to be. And I would also say that like you can't, sort of a corollary to this is you can't get discouraged if like you try a particular channel to validate an idea and that channel doesn't work, if there's other channels that might work. So I've seen people put up like ads for something and the ads don't get a lot of clicks. I'm like, oh, this idea is a bad idea. But like someone else is working on that exact same idea and like they're making millions of dollars. So it's obviously not a bad idea. Like your test just didn't work either because you tested the wrong channel, most likely. Like maybe you should have just tested it by using cold emails, right? Maybe that was just the best thing. You didn't need to get fancy, or because your landing page really sucked. The other thing I would say for validating ideas is like, I kind of want to like draw a picture. Hold on one second. The short version of it is that like an idea is not just a product idea. So a lot of times someone will like make a landing page and it'll explain like a product and they'll be like, oh, this is my idea. But in my opinion, like you've got like 4 different things. Like you've got your product. That's one part of your business, but it's like a small part of your business. And if you come up with an idea for a product, like that is not a business idea. That's just a product idea. You've also got like your market. So who is buying this? Like what do they care about? What are they like? Where do they live? How savvy are they? Do you know about them? What alternatives do they use? Like the market, basically. Like is this a growing market? Is it a shrinking market? Like that's another sort of pillar besides the product. Everyone kind of knows about those two. There's also distribution channels. So it's like kind of the third pillar. It's like a third wheel. This is like, how do you reach that market? It doesn't really matter if there's a market of people if you don't have a way to get to them. And then like fourth would be like your sort of pricing. All 4 of these need to work together. Like they all need to work in concert. And a business idea is something that encapsulates all 4 of these things together. And it kind of sounds like a lot, but it's actually not that many things. It's just 4 things. And so like the thing I want to draw is like my sort of mental model, which I didn't realize until like a few months ago. Like this is how I envision it in my head. And I've never seen anyone else sort of like describe it this way, but I just look at it as almost like 4 wheels on a car. And then you've got like your product wheel and your market wheel and your channels wheel and your pricing wheel. And they're all connected, right? So product market fit, like does your product fit your market? Like that's that kind of axle. Like market channel fit, right? Do you like the channel that you like? If the channel you like is Hacker News because you're really good at Hacker News and you really understand like how to get on Hacker News, does the market who's going to buy your product also hang out on Hacker News? If they don't, like you've got a situation that you have to resolve. Like pricing channel fit, like does the pricing of your product allow you to reach that channel? Like if your channel is sales, that means you have to hire salespeople. Salespeople are expensive. If you're selling your product for $5 a month, like it doesn't work, right? And then product pricing fit, which is like, can you profitably build your product for the price that you're charging? So all these wheels are connected. And the reason why it's useful to look at it as like wheels on a car is because a lot of people will like put all of their effort into one wheel. Like my product is just so good. It's amazing. You know, it's just an excellent market. But like you need all 4 wheels. If you have like 3 amazing wheels and like one of them's flat, like your car's not going anywhere. It's better to have 4 mediocre wheels than it is to have like one really good wheel. And so like you could torture this metaphor if you want. Like this whole thing is like a car, and then like the execution layer is like you sitting on top driving. Like how good are you at driving the car? It's kind of how I look at it. But like execution versus idea. Execution is you driving this car, but like the idea is like you have all 4 of these components working. And if these components are not in harmony, your business idea is going to be crappy. And it doesn't matter how good of an executor you are, you're not going to be able to have a good business idea. The other good thing about this model and thinking about it like this way is that it kind of makes it easy for you to figure out like what the challenges are in front of you for your business. And so if you're like, man, my product is like really high quality, I've got an amazing designer and developer, and we tested it with users and they like find it so easy to use, and like the market is really good, it's like growing and getting bigger, and the people there are like really like have a specific pain point, and the product market fit is good. Like my product solves that pain point, but like, you know, the distribution channel is like the wheel that's flat. Like, you know, to spend most of your time on the distribution channel, you don't have to spend your time tweaking your product. And a lot of times people who don't have this model, who like the only thing in their mind is product, like they'll be like, oh, I'm not growing, my numbers aren't going up, I need to add more features to my product, I need to make the product better, et cetera, et cetera. Like I've seen people enter that death spiral for years, where they're just adding more features and making their product better. And it turns out like your product is good, you just haven't hit on a good distribution channel yet. Like, or your product is like good and your distribution channel is good, but like, you know, you're getting to the top of Hacker News every day, but like no one's converting because like the market isn't really there. And so you need to like work on that part of your business. So I would say like think about those 4 things in concert, and always be asking yourself like, you know, do they fit together really well? You know, is the price right for your market? Is like the product right for this channel, et cetera? And just make like little incremental tweaks. And probably the biggest thing you can do is just look at others. Like generally speaking, you're probably not the only person with your business idea unless you're super niche. And so you can see what channels are working for them. Like what kind of market is working for them? Like what kind of pricing is working for them? The more niche you are, the more novel you are, the fewer examples you will have. And then the last thing I'll say on this is like every one of these wheels of your business has competition. So like there's going to be competition for your market. There's going to be competition for your product. There's going to be competition for these channels. There's going to be competition for the pricing. And like your business is going to have to stand out like somehow. Like it has to have some give somewhere. So like if you're entering a place where like the market is really crowded, there's tons of competitors, and the channels are really crowded, like everyone's already bidding up all the ads on Google for this, and the pricing is really competitive, like everyone is like charging very little, then like the only place where you can stand out is product. Like you have to have a killer product in that situation, otherwise you're not going to get recommended. So someone earlier talked about the podcast, just like growing a podcast. The podcast is a good example of a business I would analyze like that, where it's like market saturated, tons of podcasts, channels are saturated, tons of podcast players, no real way to get your thing promoted to the top of those channels, super competitive. Pricing is competitive, it's all free. Like the only possible give with the podcast is the quality of the product. Like you have to make your podcast better. It's really hard to find a better distribution channel than the ones that already exist. Whereas with Justin Mayers' company, he had the Kettle and Fire, the bone broth company, he was sort of iterating on like a bunch of different fronts. And so like he had like channel innovation. Like he was one of the first people to start using Instagram influencers to recommend his product. So we just got all these health food influencers. This is like 5 or 6 years ago when Instagram was like super new, and he had like no competition in the distribution channel space. So even if you had like a kind of a crappy product, or like even if the market wasn't growing that well, or even if his pricing was really expensive, like he was super competitive in the channel. And so he was like way better, and he could have like built a successful business, even though he did have a good product and all the other stuff. So I would say like look at all your different wheels of your startup car and figure out like, okay, which one of these wheels like are really competitive and which ones are not, and the ones that are not competitive are the ones where you have to like stand out. But you have to stand out in at least one of them.
I've never heard of it that way, and that's incredibly useful because there's always, like you said, the talk about product market fit, and here it's relating everything, where it's like, how are you going to get customers to the door, and are they going to be willing to pay for this problem that you're solving? So yeah, thank you, Corlin. That was awesome.
Yeah, product market fit's not enough. Like there's so many people who have like a really good product for a really good market, but it's like they just can't grow because they can't afford the Facebook ads, they can't find the channel. So like I'll say one more thing about it too. Generally, if you're coming up with a business idea, like you can look at this thing before you write a line of code, before you build anything. Like with Indie Hackers, I was thinking about this in the beginning, not as well formulated because I kind of came up with this sort of analogy later on. But like one of the things on my validation checklist is like, I suck at marketing. I suck at growth. Everything I've ever done, I feel like I built a pretty good product. I've got that thing down. Like I could stand out on the product side, but I really suck at like distributing it. So like I refuse to allow myself to build anything unless I already know the distribution channel. And so the reason I was excited about that particular idea is because I already knew the distribution channel would be Hacker News. And I was already comfortable with Hacker News because I spent so much time there that I can kind of know with some reasonable degree of certainty that it's possible for me to get to the top of it. And then I think once you start with like the hard parts of your business, like what's hard for you? Like, is it the market? Like you don't know like how to find people? Like the market's hard for a lot of people. A lot of people have a product and you're like, who's it for? They're like, everyone. And it's like, okay, so you don't know who your market is, right? Or as you ask me who Indie Hackers is for, I'm like, for developers who want to start side projects or profitable businesses. You know, it's like a very specific group. So like if market's hard for you or the channel's hard for you or whatever's hard for you, start there, try to get that figured out, like in theory, and then always like work backwards from there to do the other things. And so like if you already like, if you're good at product, like don't start with the product, start with the market, figure out what the market wants, and then use that to determine what kind of product you build. And that'll make the market thing way easier because your product will be like specifically tailored to that market. I think a lot of people just like start with the product no matter what. And then they try to like shove their product into like the hole where like so whatever distribution channel or whatever market, it doesn't fit because they didn't craft their product from the ground up to fit. So you got to figure out the hard parts first and then work backwards to do the parts that are easier for you.